you the Keymaster? Welcome back to another DEStalks with Rob and Chase this week. Rob, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm pumped up. It's a good week. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And I realize that this is probably going to embarrass you, and I don't care.
Do it.
I like the paisley shirt, man.
Thank you. I try to sprinkle sunshine anywhere I go. And if making a fool out of myself on camera makes someone else smile during the day, I have successfully accomplished
I like
task.
it. I like that shirt, man. It's different from what we've seen you in on the podcast, right? You're usually on very, like me, very solid colors, right?
Well, yeah. So if you go and look in my closet as we roll into springtime here in Texas,
yeah,
it's time to do a little clean out, put away some of the winter clothes, and bust out some of your more spring to summer clothing. As I did that, I realized all I wear is like black and gray, like in my leisure wear, if you will. And then professionally,
it's easy, right?
Well, and then professionally, I have like solid color button-up shirts, and and then there's this outlier. This was historically reserved for our other podcast. I thought I'd bring the vibe over here today. Maybe lighten it up as it's turning into a beautiful spring day right outside the window.
Hold on. Now, it's not spring yet. It'll be spring tomorrow. It's the last day of winter.
It's spring. Here in Texas, it's spring. And it's been spring since November.
Spring since November.
Yeah, we gallivanted for 2 weeks with winter, and then outside of that, we just roll right into spring. It's great.
Just extended spring.
It's great, man.
You go from long fall to short winter to extended spring.
That's absolutely right. We're not playing the rubber band game like you Midwestern folk, where it's 70 degrees today and snowing tomorrow.
Yeah, that happened yesterday up in Kansas City. If you are weather fans, it was 70-something degrees yesterday, and then today it is supposed to be stormy and gross for the rest of the day. I'm taking advantage of what sunlight I've been promised I have left to do this podcast.
Better hurry up.
Speaking of which, you and I were having a conversation this morning. I called you up, said, "Hey man, I'm kind of hurting this morning. I'm lacking." Right. And you and I got to the core of it and we started talking about it, and then we paused because we feel like you and I have had this conversation more than once. You and I have started a small business, and I was dealing with the imposter syndrome of that this morning. I'm not feeling like I'm worthy to be where I am. And you had some really interesting insights on that. And I kind of want to bring that conversation back here. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
All right. So I'll expose myself. This morning we kind of, we jumped in. I called Rob. I said, "Hey man, look, I'm kind of struggling. We had some business that we were looking to do that, kind of fell through. And we, kind of had a little shaking here at the company, which is the three of us. We kind of had a shaking here at the company, and we're kind of having to figure our way through that. And through that came some insecurities.
Yeah.
And I was insecure in the fact that I felt like people were going to see that I have no idea what I'm doing, and that I'm not, quote unquote, qualified to do what I'm doing. I know I can't be the only one out there. So I can't remember the exact words that you used, but it was something of the nature of, that's everybody. That's life. Like, we're all figuring this out. Right?
Yep. I'm sure it was very eloquent and probably very Edgar Allan Poe-esque, or, I'm sure there was a lot of gravitas in my words whatever I said to you earlier. But I do, in all seriousness, I think everybody kind of struggles with that at any point. You're going to struggle with imposter syndrome whenever you're doing something new to you. Whenever you're doing something that's outside of, your realm of relative expertise. And since we're talking about our I don't know. I don't want to call it a private conversation, but the conversation between the two of us, I'm going to talk about that conversation because you said it delved into who we are. Because I made the statement, my wife is my confidant. And so whenever I'm struggling, I go and I talk with her. And lots of times, bless her, she just listens. And then I can talk it out and then move on. For me, that's how I work. Like, let's get it out in the open. Let's identify the pain point and then move on from it because sitting around and fixating on it is never going to solve the problem. What is the Woody Harrelson has a great quote, and hopefully everyone knows who Woody Harrelson is. And if you don't, you're too young to be here, so go away. But Woody Harrelson, it was somebody told a funny story. I don't remember who it was. It was another actor, and they were struggling with that very similar thing, like the imposter syndrome and the anxiety that's bred outside, within imposter syndrome. And Woody Harrelson, the very successful man, has a very long, successful career. And they asked him, how do you deal with that? And it was the simplest answer ever. And it was, I just don't think about it. Perfect.
Okay.
I'm the same. Like, you almost have to. Like, you almost have to set it aside. Because
Well, it's like telling water not to be wet, right?
Well, yes, to a degree. To a degree, yes, you're not wrong. And I know that's making light of a very serious, issue and what we're talking about. But I think that there's some real validity to what he's saying. I think for me, or how I interpreted that, is
Yes, sir, Major.
you're wasting your time feeling that way.
Yeah.
Because the reality of the situation is what I said to you this morning, verbatim, was, you're qualified because you're the only one that stood up and said, I'll do it.
You did.
You're the only one that stood up and said, hey, Rob, I know you talked about starting your own business. Let's do it together and I'll be your COO. You were the only one that made that offer. Yeah, you were the only one that made that offer. So in my mind, you're qualified for the position. And I think it's important for everyone to realize. And I think I would really challenge someone if they said, yeah, I stepped into a C-suite level position and I was ready for it. I knew exactly what I had to do. I knew exactly what I was doing. I was ready for it. Their first go round. If they can say that, I think you're full of it. And I would love to talk with you because I don't think there's anyone outside of maybe medical professionals who know exactly what they're doing whenever they're inside of a situation. You know what I mean? Or I would pray that my medical professional knows what they're doing whenever a situation arises. But it's important to know before we move off that. I think it's important for us to remember the reason that we're collaborative. The reason you collaborate inside, professionally, is because you don't have the answer, and that's okay. That was a lesson that I had to learn myself. The response of, if you ask me a question, on paper, I'm the CEO of a higher education consulting firm. I'm sure most people would think, well, he probably has the answer. Let me go to him. The reality of the situation is I probably have the right answer less than 50% of the time, which is why we collaborate. Because together, we're better than alone. And so you remove imposter syndrome through collaboration, understanding that everyone's just kind of faking it till we make it, or we're figuring it out along the way. That was the conversation you and I had. Yeah. That was my motivational Wednesday.
Well, the fact that we're not, alone, we kind of stopped it there. We said, hey, let's bring it over to the podcast because I agree. I think that if everybody, I've never, let's take this back to our military service, right? We're both veterans. Yeah. You remember the first time that you were given responsibility, right? And you thought you were ready for it.
Right? Craved it, yes.
You craved it. You wanted it so bad, right? Yep. I want that responsibility so bad. And then I found as I learned and I was a little bit more wiser, I started letting those people who felt that way, because I no longer felt that way. I look back and I said, wow, I've had a lot of failures. Right. But I also can pinpoint some of the successes I've had in my life, but I've had a lot more failures than I've had successes. Man, but I have learned from those failures and tried to be a better mentor and a better leader and a better better steward of those responsibilities. And I think that that's the difference, right, between a lot of people, moving forward from that. How do you ever break through that imposter syndrome? Well, it's just a constant reminder that if not you, then who, right?
Yeah, man. And I don't know if you ever get rid of the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Genuinely. I think you can overcome it through confidence and knowledge. I think you can overcome those scenarios. But I mean, what do we consider an industry professional or an expert? Someone who spent 10 plus years doing a specific task or in a specific industry is the overarching moniker for an expert. I've been doing this for 10 years, and I can tell you right now, I don't feel like an expert all the time. As a matter of fact, I feel like a fish out of water.
Right, but what are you an expert in now? Like all the things that come, that's such a big word and I have a hard time saying it, but all the third party waves that come with that, right? All the traditionary, am I saying that right?
I don't know, keep going.
So like you now know whenever you are in some of those meetings and decisions are being made or you are being told a hard no, right? Like I've gotten to the point now in my life, whenever I hear no, I get excited because it's an opportunity. Like I've stopped caring so much about my successes and I've started caring more about my failures and wanting to be better at what I fail at versus trying to be better at what I'm good at, right? Because I'm finding myself, I enjoy whenever I get to the success more if I fail, if it's more challenging, if it is completely outside the realm of what I would consider to be my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
I give it so much more of my energy, right? Like I now at this stage of my life give it a lot more energy. And I think that's what changes. I think that's the shift in that 10 years of experience in a field gives you, is that you know where to put your energy, right?
Yes.
Like navigating doesn't mean that you always have the right answer, right? But that experience, so that I consider you a master, is you don't freak out. Like you get to that road and you go, well, I mean, it is what it is. Or you look at it and you go, well, that's a great barrier, that you brought up there. Let's see how we get around that, right? Because now you're at that point in your career where you just look at it, you look at a barrier and you say, either we have to go through or around.
Well,
right. And you've had experience doing that enough to where you have the confidence to move forward into the unknown.
Well, yes. And I think to your point, whenever, as you're talking, I'm thinking about what you're saying, and you're absolutely right. The 10 years doing what we're doing, and I'll talk about me because I know me best. 10 years doing this, I can now realize that, it gives me enough experience to say, that's not my area of expertise. Let me find someone who has that expertise in their tool bag, which is why you do things like bring on Chase Hurst into DES. Because from an operational standpoint, that's not necessarily my wheelhouse. That is not where I've put my time and attention. So I have to find the right people to fit the need, right? So maybe that's what they mean whenever they say if you've been doing something for 10 years, you're an expert in it. Maybe it's not necessarily you're an expert in the field. You're an expert in knowing your own strengths and have the expertise when to know to stop and source it out to someone else. Because as you were talking about a military experience. I said that I craved leadership. I did. You know that. I came in as a fuzzy and hit E5 in 3.5 years because I thought I was ready. That's what I wanted, right? I wanted to be in the NC.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was
wanted. The responsibility. I want it. I'm hungry. Give me more.
Well, and that's why being a young NCO in my early 20s, whenever a roadblock arose, I didn't go and seek counsel. I attacked the problem. And that, we have you've heard it 1,000 times. I'm sure other people did too. I view my role as an NCO as take a boulder and turn it into tiny rocks. That way we can move it. or I
Yeah.
can move it easier. I can remove that barrier for you. Whereas now, as the CEO here at DES, as your business partner, I look at that and I don't think of that boulder as an obstacle for me to overcome. I look at it as an opportunity for us to come up with a creative solution on how to remove that boulder or that barrier. So it's not about me anymore. It's about the team.
It's about finding, collaborating in a side of a team and coming up with a chemical formula for the TNT for the boulder that we're looking to blow. Right? Like, and it's fun. And whenever you find, I find that extremely fun. This is the best job I've ever had.
Well, I'm glad you say that. I love how the sun is hitting me. It's very Final Destination-esque. You know what I mean? You get it. So I'm very curious where it's coming from. So if you see me moving around a little bit in the back of my head, I'm like,
well, I'm sitting here as we're having this conversation. I'm wondering, how do we tie this desk talk back into what we do here at DES? And I could think of no greater pathway than to continue to echoing what you say all the time. If you're not constantly improving yourself through education, right? If you're not constantly upskilling yourself and looking for ways to innovate and rebrand, if you will. I mean, I hate using that term, but if you're not constantly looking at those things, then I mean, still waters breed bacteria and are no longer viable, right? So we as business believe that you have to be a river, you have to continuously flow, you have to have a current, you have to continually feed through your education and through your endeavors, right?
absolutely. I said it last week. If you're not evolving, if you're not retooling and upskilling yourself, you're going to be left behind. And it happens like that. It happens like that. That's what happens when you get comfortable, though. We all know that. You get comfortable inside of your career. Inside of your career, you have an employee who's you see them kind of slowing down a little bit. Your high performers slowing down a little bit. Why? It's because they've become comfortable. Not in a negative way, but you have to push them and yourself to get outside of your comfort zone.
Well, yeah, we all need that person, right?
Yeah, dude, and we're not talking about going back to school. Like, you don't have to go back to school and get a second or third master's degree. Jump on LinkedIn Learning. Jump on Google Search. Like, this stuff is mostly free. I won't say it's all free. Mostly free. And just to have that additional tool or that additional conversational piece whenever you go out and you're meeting with an IT, for us, if we go out and meet with an IT company, let's just say AWS, not a sponsor, but you could be. Whenever we go meet with AWS, maybe it's a good idea if we jump onto AWS's certification platform and knock out some of their training and their coursework. That way we can intelligently speak to their product. It's just a different way of looking at things.
No, it's we're seeing right now. I feel like we are in the. Our current administration has been echoing this, and I think they're 100% correct, right? And I know we don't like getting political on this show, but we really are in a period of transition, okay? And we're talking about, and our country's in a period of transition. We're bringing a lot more factory jobs. Our economy is going to change how we make money and how we, our industries are going to, widen up a little bit here. We've seen some big investments into more factory jobs. We also seen huge investments into semiconductors and things like that. So looking forward, there's going to be a lot, hopefully, and as I'm being optimistic, we're going to have some economic opportunity there that might cause you to need to reskill or re-up. Through that does not mean that you necessarily need to go back to a traditional 4-year institution and start all over. Okay. That's what Rob and I are trying. That's what DES is all about. We're saying, hey, look, you're an adult learner. I love using the term an owl, an older, wiser learner, right? Because you understand now what you need, right? So if you can identify what skill losses that you have, because technology is advancing every day and we want it to, right? So if you are needing a refresher course in how to speak to AI, how to integrate AI into your systems, right? Like as a business owner, I can tell you right now, I am constantly retooling and interfacing with AI because I do believe it is the future to help ease small business operations like ourselves, ease some of that workflow, some of those barriers that small businesses have developed. Rob and I have found AI systems that are coming into place that we have invested in our time and our in monetarily to be able to understand and move a little bit more dynamically, right?
Well said. It fits right into the name of your business, Dynamic Educational Solutions. We're always looking for dynamic solutions to a problem. And AI, hey, listen, I don't want to spend a ton of time on that because I think we've beaten the AI horse to death. But
yeah, it was just an example.
No,
right?
no, it's like, a really good point.
Else.
No. You brought up a really good point because you said AI is assisting small business and really pushing us forward. And I think what we're seeing, if you look at the history of AI, it's existed for large organizations. And they've leveraged AI and they've curated AI to make them so efficient and so proficient that they can move faster than us tiny little fish. And now you're seeing AI become open source, and everybody's like, holy crap, what is this? This is going to replace my job here, and here. It may. But if you learn how to leverage AI, it won't replace you. It's a force multiplier.
Thank you. I like to think our audience here has some base in what we do as veterans. So I'm going to wrap it back to this. If you don't have a better way of saying it, this is a combat multiplier, right? This is a battlefield multiplier for you. Look at it that way, right? If you're an infantryman, look at it like this, as this is our saw, right? In our fire team, right? This is what is going to get us there and move the needle forward a lot faster. I love that.
Yeah, you're not wrong, man. But I also think, you brought up a lot of good points. This is a conversation that we could have for hours. It really is. I know a lot of people struggle with the imposter syndrome thing. AI could probably certainly help you with that. Because I'm a firm believer. I struggle with it too. I struggle with the imposter syndrome too. I had a conversation with Melissa about it yesterday. And we were talking about it after, we were both done with work. And I was like, golly, I've never been a CEO of an organization before. I've been at the director level. I've been a manager for years and years and years. But I've never been a CEO, someone to provide long-term strategic vision and provide that to an organization that's in an executable and quantifiable way. That's new for me. So there's a lot of struggle. There's a lot of questions. Am I doing things the right way? Or am I maneuvering and positioning us for long-term sustainable success? All those things. And I think if there's any other employer out there that listens to this, if there's any manager that listens to us, whatever, regardless of industry, I think I don't know if this is true. It's true for me. I think you overcome the imposter syndrome with experience and knowledge. But most importantly, I think it's overcome with passion and belief in mission. Here at DES, our entire mission is developing new funding pathways for veterans and their family members into higher education and to ensure successful career success, successful long-term sustained success in your career. That's what we do here. And so it's hard for me to think you and I aren't qualified to do a job that no one else is willing to stand up for publicly and make that their entire mission. I know there's a lot of organizations out there who it's a tertiary mission for them, right? We already said AWS, and so I'll pick on Amazon again. What a wonderful employer for our military. What a wonderful
veteran programs. Holy crap. They lead the way. They
do. They really do. They've really pioneered that. But how much impact can they truly have on the space?
Right.
You know what I mean? And passion breeds conversation. And so if I'm passionate about what I'm doing, I don't care what my functional title is. Whenever I go into a meeting, if you bring the passion into what you're talking about, no one's going to see your imposter syndrome. They're going to see the mission that you're passionate about, and then they'll want to interface with you in some way. So anyway, there you go. There's my unsolicited advice. But since you're here listening to us on DEStalks, you get it. You're welcome. I don't charge a fee, but I'm happy to come talk to your entire organization if you'd like to, and I will charge a fee. Reach out to us at info@dynamiceducationalsolutions.org.
Well, I know this is, this is a little throwback, but I mean, this is what Desk Talks is all about. It's conversations. It's a real conversation. It's speaking up. I say it all the time, closed mouths don't get fed. And if I'm having these issues, then I guarantee I'm not the only one, right? So how do you speak up, right? Like that's somebody I was talking to last week actually asked me, he said, you say that all the time, but I just don't know what to ask. Right? Closed mouths don't get fed, Chase. You say that all the time, but I mean, how do where do you even start?
That's a good question.
The great thing is that guys, this is another side of that imposter syndrome, right? Well, dude, if you're the only person standing up, right, that is around you, right? I would love to use my wife as an example, right? Because I'm going to use another person other than ourselves. But my wife is one of the best people, in my opinion, that sees a need and fills a need, right? My wife has no problems, even though she's tiny, 115-pound, 5'4" marathoner, and she gets up there with a mouse of a woman who has the roar of a lion, where he gets up there and asks the questions. I mean, that is just who she is. But a lot of us, I'm the kind of guy who sits in the back and I'll wait until everything's over and then I'll walk up to somebody and say, now, what did you mean by that? Right there. That's how you do that. Closed mouths. There's two different ways of doing it. Like you have my wife, who's an example, she gets up and she's, able to get up in front of the crowd and just say, well, who's managing that? I'll do it. And then you got people like me who sit in the back and wait until everything's done. I walk up and I'm like, all right, so what do you need? Like, how do you do that?
And both great options. And
but the first step is action, I think is where I was going to go.
That's always the first step.
It's literally just saying, I looked at that person, I said, exactly what you're doing right now, man. Identifying the fact that you don't know where you're going or what to say. So now you're actually asking the question that you need to be asking.
Well, I mean, that's decision paralysis. That's you're sitting around ideating and you can do it forever and ever. Amen. It's like being stuck in mud. You're just going to stand there and wait for somebody to come rescue you by asking the question you want answered. Or are you going to take action, get yourself out and ask the question? So I would almost, with that, if I may, I would love to put it back on, hopefully, if you've made it here, we're at the 29-minute mark. If you've made it this far, man, I want to know from our community bringing in collaboration. If you've struggled with imposter syndrome or decision paralysis, what have you, share it. I want to hear the story. You don't have to come on DEStalks. You can post anonymously if you want to, but share your story. I mean, because like you said, Chase, and I always believe this. If I have a problem, I know someone else has a problem with it too. The difference between us and other people is I'm going to stand up and say I had a problem here and then share with you how I overcame the problem. Not because I'm telling you I'm right or that I know the answer, but I'm telling you what worked for us. So we want to hear what worked for you because there isn't a one-size-fits-all answer. So if you've struggled with imposter syndrome, if you've struggled with decision paralysis, drop it in the comments. Send us an email because I'm happy. If you don't want, let's do this. If you're not comfortable putting it in the comment section, we're on Spotify, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X.
We're on the Big Seven.
Yeah, we're everywhere. If you're not comfortable dropping the comment on that platform, send us an email. Our email address will be in the description of this episode. If you send us an email and you don't put in there something like, please don't read this out loud, I'm going to read it out loud on our next episode. I'm going to share with everyone next week. I will keep you anonymous. I promise. I won't name names. It will be anonymous. But people need to hear stories outside of just Chase and I talking. So anyway, I'm off that. Please interact with us. We want to hear from you.
That's right. And make sure you give it a like, share, and follow, right?
Yeah, do that.
All right. Well, hey, thank you guys so much for being here this week. We appreciate you. Make sure that you stay tuned. We have more coming at you. Until then, stay minimally professional, our friends.
Skadoodles.
Skadoodles.